And lastly, just to bounce off of these ideas, we've seen plenty of change in the whole student athlete model. And Elise and I have just been going back and forth on this for anybody that's listened to this podcast before. We're curious on your take. Is the student athlete model still alive? Is it athlete before student? What are you seeing or predicting?
I don't like to use the term student athlete, and Elise and I have gotten into this before, but for your listeners who might not know, that very term was invented in the 50s by the then head of the NCAA as a way of getting out of paying a workers' compensation claim for a football player who was killed during a game, and his widow had filed this workers' comp claim under state law in Colorado. And part of the NCAA's defense was to say he's not a worker, or he was not a worker, so the workers' comp laws don't apply. He's a student athlete. He's a student first. This was just an extracurricular activity that he was doing. And the NCAA won, and they weren't liable for any workers' compensation claims that this football player's widow had sought. And so I think there's a lot of very romanticized ideas out there about this whole student athlete model. And I think it's a good model in a lot of ways. Did I benefit from it? Absolutely. Did you benefit from it? I think you'd probably say yes as well. And I think a lot of athletes do feel very positively about their experiences, especially, that was especially clear in those Division I SAC rooms where you have a lot of athletes. There's 32 Division I conferences. Only 5 of them are power conferences. The other 27, that's a whole different game. And it's not, it's comparable in some ways, but in other ways it's very different. And so, when we were having these conversations about, well, what is a good model, I think those people feel, or I know they feel very positively about their experiences. And so they're fighting to protect this model that allowed them to have these experiences. But I'm not sure that, well, let me step back. I think it's a different question entirely to ask whether I benefited from the model and whether I think it's a good model. Because at the end of the day, the current system creates winners and losers, right? It's redistributing wealth in some form or another within this whole system. And there's some literature that suggests that there's this big transfer of rents from predominantly lower income, predominantly Black football and basketball players to predominantly wealthier, predominantly white athletes in Olympic sports, plus administrators and coaches and everybody else. That's out there. That's not, it's very difficult to prove, definitively that that's actually how money is being distributed. And a lot of athletic directors will say, well, we use the money from football to pay for everything else. A lot of schools, football doesn't make any money outside of, the power conferences. And so they have a bit of a different model. But if that's the case, if my scholarship only exists because a football player who's, taking on tremendous risk to their health, if my scholarship only exists because revenue that should be going to him is being redistributed to me, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I don't think that's a good thing. I don't really want that on my conscience. And so did I benefit from it? Absolutely. But is it a good system? No, I don't think it is. I think there are ways to create a good system out of all of this that preserve the things that I benefited from while also doing right by the athletes who are currently being taken advantage of. I don't think it's necessarily a zero-sum game. I think there is a way forward in all of this to preserve the good parts of college athletics and also fix the bad ones. Do I have an answer for that? No.